Great to be here exploring the Vipassana Jhanas with you again. And today we're going to continue our exploration of the third Vipassana Jhana. Um, I'm going to talk about it in relationship to a practice that we're doing here together. We've done it before. It's to me, I consider this like a core practice for Vipassana Jhana, um, particularly if you do it socially out loud with others. You can have a kind of experience of social Vipassana Jhana, the experience of together deconstructing reality. Hey, it's always better to do things together, including deconstruct reality or our perception of what reality is, really. And in the third Vipassana Jhana, as you recall, one name for this in terms of the phases of insight model is disillusionment. So when we go through this state, and it's got more of a lens of clearly seeing the way things are. This is how Vipassana is described in English. And what that means to me is that we're taking an objective perspective on our subjective experience. That's a nerdier way of putting it, but we're looking at what our experience is like. So it's like we're holding our experience as if it's an object, something that we can observe. And when we do observe our experience, we notice first that it's impermanent, it changes. And then we notice too that there's this constant dissatisfaction or struggle or pain involved in being sentient and being a sentient being that seems to be unavoidable. It just relates to being kind of aware and being self-aware. Damn. Self-awareness comes with pain and struggle, and because now we are something, we know we're going to die, we have this idea of death, and we feel anxious about dying, and we feel anxious about people we know dying, and gosh, and taxes and everything, and health, all the Buddhist truths, which are just human truths. We start to kind of realize this because we're observing experience. And what do we notice about experience? It's constantly arising and passing away. And this experience in this moment, the way when we observe it in meditation, we watch to see how the breath is, or to see the rise and fall of thunder. Then we see in that instant what it's like in the macro as well. This micro moment reflects the macro reality we live in. And we get that. Like we know that. Oh, yeah, this too shall pass. This life will pass in the same way that the sound of the thunder just passed. And that at first and initially, when we're first moving through the third Vipassana Jhana, there can be some turbulence related to that realization, related to seeing clearly how things are, because we're the part of us that wants to be someone and have some ground under our feet, who is resisting the reality of groundlessness. That's how we put ground under our feet. In my experience, is we resist groundlessness. That's how we feel we have some ground, because we resist no ground. And in the resisting, there's a sense of like, I'm someone, I'm something, I've got somewhere, I've got some boundaries, and I can maintain this in some fundamental sense. Relatively speaking, of course, we are someone and we have an identity, and different parts of our identity are shaped by different experiences. But here I'm talking in like in the ultimate meditative sense, which is what Vipassana is about. It's about seeing this. We uh we freak out when we realize that uh we're being asked to let go in this practice. That's my experience. It's like, okay, I read it in the book. I know you said letting go like 100 times, but are you really meant letting go, like completely letting go? Okay. Um, so seeing these three characteristics: impermanence, selflessness, suffering, we're really clearly seeing them in the third Vipassana jhana. And what can be blissful about that is the letting go, is the surrender. Yeah, this is in the third Vipassana Jhana. This is how I always describe it to people when I, especially when I'm working with someone one on one and I hear them describing very clearly the pattern of being in this, working in this state, which can often be quite challenging and difficult, to be honest. If you hadn't already been able to tell the way I'm talking about it, or haven't already experienced it yourself, you know what I mean. But there, there's this really beautiful process, often traditionally called purification. And the basic idea here is we meet the suffering of ourselves and each other in the world in a more sensitive way here in the third Vipassana Jhana. We realize the impermanence, the transitory beauty of being alive, and are tenderized by that reality, by that recognition. And so this brings about a tremendous potential for compassion to arise in response to the recognition of suffering, which is a characteristic of this practice. And I would just say, yeah, it's like totally necessary for this third Vipassana Jhana to mature. Compassion is necessary. So if we want to link this now to the metta jhanas, we need compassion to be able to rest with the suffering of the world. Because in the third Vipassana Jhana, we're not just opening to our own suffering. We've already dissolved the idea that we are separate from everything else. That happened in the second Vipassana Jhana. Now in the third jhana, we're dealing with the ramifications of that truth, um, which is that we're not separate. Oh shit! Maybe there's a reason we want to feel separate, so we don't have to feel each other's stuff so much. We don't have to be dealing with the messiness of the other, and the messiness of ourselves, really. Anyway, so this is what we encounter in the third Vipassana Jhana. It's really difficult, messy territory. Often, if people have a lot of shadow work that is being called to do, to be attended to, this is definitely the state, if you're working through the jhanas, that you'll get like a hint that you've got some work to do, some cleaning up work. I see the therapists in the room laughing knowingly. Yeah. So so this is also a good time to sort of look at, okay, what do I need to clean up, what do I need to work with, and that's again part of the purification opportunity here. It's a chance to clean up and a chance to purify the heart and mind and the body, and to come back into right relationship, with ourselves and each other. And it's in a way so beautiful that we cycle through these states. They're not just like a stage thing that you just make progress through and then you leave behind the stage that, and it's like once you're done with level one, you don't go back. No, like you come back through and we get to relearn this lesson again and again, even though we probably would prefer not to. So this is the third Vipassana Jhana. It hurts so good. Okay, so what is it that we're letting go of in this practice, moving into the third Vipassana Jhana, into this dissolving into groundlessness? I think what we're letting go of is control fundamentally here, as a sense of being an agent who's in control. Um, that's part of what dissolves in the third jhana. It's part of why there can be some turbulence, because there's the reaction to letting go of control. And then eventually we learn how to do it. Like as I said, compassionate presence was the key for me. And I see for a lot of people, the key seems to be something around the heart, some kind of way that our heart, we know we need to meet our experience, but are struggling to do, struggling to meet our experience with this quality, whatever it might be, forgiveness, patience, ease. And here, in the third Vipassana Jhana, we're being invited to do that, to figure out what is it the heart needs, the mind. What does the mind needs? What does the body need? I remember when I was first working in the third Vipassana Jhana territory a lot. My first time really encountering it in a deep way. My partner Emily was as well, and we handled it very differently. This is interesting. She handled it by taking lots of long baths and going on hikes. I handled it by sitting more and doing more formal practice. Like instead of an hour, I do 2 hours a day. But I think what I learned from her, and now not at the time, but in retrospect, um, was that that's a good way of working in this jhana. If you just to relax and to focus on being in the body, to being grounded, to being part of nature. Those are all ways of allowing the groundlessness of our situation to find some resting place. How can groundlessness find resting place in itself? That's the key.